Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Dr. Ahmed Kalebi. I am the former chairman of the task force on the redevelopment of Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust that was appointed in February, 6th of February 2023, and our term ended in November, 5th of November 2023. We served in the task force for 9 months tenure, and right now, basically, I'm the former chairman rather than an active chairman. So many people have been wondering what happened to the task force. Where is the task force? Where are the task force members now? What am I doing as a chairman? In fact, people tell me that we disappeared without a trace. I just want to clarify that as a task force, we had a gazette notice, which is Gazette number 1414 of February 2023, which had a specific term of 9 months. And the Gazette notice gave a legal instrument, and it had a specific tenure with a legal effect, which means after the task force tenure, we are no longer, as task force members, we are no longer an active task force. Therefore, once my term ended as chairman, that was it. So during the task force tenure, which was very intense for 9 long months, we were very, very active. We got involved with the community. We got involved with stakeholders. We were all over the place, and we completed our job. After we completed our job, which was basically to come up with an assessment and recommendations on how Kibra Nubian land can be redeveloped, our job was over. So right now, our mandate is to hand over the final report to the appointing authority, who is the Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Housing, to hand over that report, which will eventually go to the President, who we are also expecting to hand over the report to, and that will then go to the community through the trustees. And thereafter, it is the community and the government to decide. Because as you remember, it is the government which appointed us as a task force. We were appointed by the government, not by the community. We were appointed by the government. I was appointed chairman by the government. I did not solicit for that position. Once we got appointed by the government, it was for a specific purpose. The government was interested in getting views and an assessment of whatever had been done as far as the redevelopment of Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust was concerned, the 288 acres. So once the government gave us the appointment, we had members from the community. Actually, we were 17 of us from the community, and we had members from private sector and from government. In total, we were 40. Eventually, we grew up to co-opted other people to 55 members. And we worked very, very closely together with the community, different structures in the community, and we finished our job. So I know a lot of people wonder what happened to us, why are we not active? But we no longer have any mandate. Our mandate ended with the government, and when the government finished its tenure. Actually, there was a call for our tenure to be extended, in fact, even from some people from government and from the people from the community, because there are a lot of things that they felt had not been finalized due to some delays during our tenure. But I was very adamant that our job, as far as the objectives and the terms of reference were met, and there was no need for us to continue extended as a task force. And that is why when 5th of November reached, we finished our job. We had already handed over the report to the community through Horizon TV and social media. We handed over our report to the government through the PS. Now we're just waiting to hand over the final report, pending some things that the community itself needs to do, because the community needs to actually elect new trustees, because even the trustees who are there, their term has ended. So the new trustees will be the one who will be negotiating with government based on our recommendations. So the question is, how are we communicating as a task force to the community, and what have we communicated since our term ended? Actually, I think there has been no other task force that has been more open and transparent than our task force. When we had our inaugural meeting, I was given the mandate as chairman to be the spokesperson for the task force and to communicate freely. And I made a very deliberate decision at that point that all our activities will always be broadcasted and communicated, not only to the Kibra Nubian community and the Kibra population, but it will be open to the public. Because remember, As a task force, we were appointed by the government on a gazette notice. And actually the opening term of our gazette notice was, let it be known to the public. So we were there for the public. You have to actually have transparency. And what we did is every time we had a meeting, I always used to give a summary of a very comprehensive, detailed summary of whatever transpired in our meetings. Whenever we had community engagements, whenever we had stakeholder engagements, we always used to give out a report with all the details, very, very transparent, so much so that, in fact, some members of the community were even getting uncomfortable and telling me, why are you giving out so much information about what you guys are doing? Don't you want to hide something? Then I said, there's nothing to hide because there is a right to information for everybody, both the Nubian community and the non-Nubian community. So we were very, very transparent. Every information that we needed to get out there was given out there. And in October, when we were winding up our activities and finishing, we actually gave a 2.5 hour live broadcast on Horizon TV. And that went on YouTube and social media, where we detailed everything we had done, all our recommendations, all our findings. And actually, the draft report that we prepared, we shared it across the board. We gave the physical copies of those reports to all the village chairs, to all the organized groups in the community. And I personally went to each and every village with our task force members from the community, highlighting all the findings and all our recommendations. So everything that we need to have given out was given out there. It's open in the public, in the public domain, on WhatsApp and everything. The final report, of course, will be published. And once it is published and handed over to government, the report will be circulated. But there will be no difference between that report and whatever we communicated, whatever the PowerPoints we shared, the different documents that we presented across the board. Now, when people say that the reports are being given to a select few, that is actually far from the truth, because I never used to communicate with any individuals directly. Every communication that we had as a task force was always up in the public domain, on my verified Twitter and Facebook pages, even on LinkedIn, and our task force members will widely circulate it on WhatsApp and on different groups. So anybody who claims that they were not given information is because they probably did not look for that information, or they were ignoring it. And all that information from the day one to the last day has been in the social media. In fact, even right now, you can go back to my social media pages and you can search for Kibra 288, you can search for the task force, and you'll get all the records. And many other members of our task force shared it also widely. So a lot of people are wondering what will happen to the non-Nubians in Kibra and those Nubians who are not bloodline descendants and beneficiaries. In other words, there is a fear that perhaps in our recommendations for the project of the redevelopment and affordable housing in the Kibra 288, people will be displaced, people will be evicted, and people will lose out. I think it is important that I summarize and I highlight what was our main recommendation as far as how we envisage the Kibra 288 project. For us to actually reach our recommendations, initially we went to the public, starting with the Nubian community members at all villages, asking for their views unprompted, without us telling them what our views are. That was in February and March. Up to April, I remember it was Ramadan, we engaged the community and asked them, what do they want? What do they picture? Nubians and non-Nubians, they gave us a lot of their views. Then we went and sat with professionals within the task force and outside who are experts when it comes to matters of housing, redevelopment, and the rest. They also gave us their views. Then we processed those views and we discussed them. We even discussed them with different stakeholders. We discussed them with developers. We discussed them with the investors until we came up with a picture of what we foresee being done in 288 for Kibra Redevelopment. In a nutshell, the project is designed in such a way, or rather what we are proposing and recommending, remember, it's a proposal and recommendation. In other words, whatever we recommend, we are recommending it to government and we are recommending it to the community. Government is interested in seeing Kibra redeveloped. We as a task force had practical recommendations and proposals of how the redevelopment can be done based on all the views we collected, all the stakeholder engagements we had. So the general plan is that Kibra is 288 acres. Out of the 288 acres, about 38 acres will go towards what we call infrastructure, horizontal infrastructure, the road, the sewage, power and other utilities. That leaves you with 250 acres. Out of the 250 acres, we envisage 50 acres will be used for residential, to house the people in Kibra currently. And the other 200 acres, which is 4/5, can be used for commercial development. Why am I saying that? Because the entire 288 acres currently occupied in Kibra, there is a lot of misuse of the land. It is poorly utilized. You are talking about ground floor. At most, maybe G+1. A few structures have maybe a gorofa moja, but most of Kibra is just on ground floor. Now, imagine if you have to take all the residents of Kibra, all the households in Kibra, if you take all those households and then convert them into 15 to 20-story buildings. It means a house, let's say if you are in Kambimuru, for example, in your area, you can all fit in 1/10 or 1/20th of the space if you go vertically. So there's a lot of wasted space. And from our calculation, if you include green spaces and the rest, all the residential areas in Kibra currently can be fit into 50 acres, which allows you 200 acres for other development. So from our calculation, you can actually fit in all the residents, the current residents of Kibra, Nubians and non-Nubians, into 50 acres of a very nice, well-developed project, residential project, which is mixed use. Then you can have the other 200 acres and you can do whatever commercial development you want, malls, offices, light industry, and hotels. You can have mice, for meetings and conferences and events. You can have, sports facilities in the other 280 acres, which can be a source of revenue. It can be a source of commercial empowerment. And basically, that's the whole plan. So if you look at it from that perspective, a lot of people have this unfounded fear, and others are passing around malicious claims saying that there'll be people who will be, the land will be taken, there'll be people who will be thrown out. It is far from the truth. From our calculation, all the current residents of Kibra can actually fit into the redevelopment, and there'll be enough for commercial, which will generate revenue to pay off for the houses that the Nubians who own the land will be living in, while the current people in Kibra who are tenants will still be able to become tenants in a better environment, because we know from the census of 2019, 90% of the Kibra population are tenants. The same 90% can still be housed as tenants under what we call an affordable housing scheme, whereby the difference between the affordable housing scheme for government, or the affordable housing project for government, and what we propose here, we're not proposing rent to own, because the Nubians have rejected that. They say they don't want this thing of rent to own, I don't know, paying to own. They don't want all those things. What they're saying, this is their land, they want to own. So they can actually own the houses, while the other people who are tenants can actually get low-cost housing at affordable rent, because most people are also saying, I don't want to buy a house in Nairobi. Why should I get a house which I have a tenant purchase scheme? So the entire 288 acres will be owned by the Nubians. The projects that will be there will be joint ventures, joint projects with investors and government. So basically that's what we are proposing. And on that basis, it means nobody will be thrown out. Of course, people will have to be relocated during the construction. Just like the same way, if you have your own land and you want to build it, you'll move out, construct, then go back. Now, for the non-Nubians and the Nubians who are not direct beneficiaries, they have all the opportunity to come in as investors, because this is a very, very big project. The Nubians themselves cannot even finish it. It means today, anybody can go there and say, I want to be maybe part of the development for a hospital, or for a mall, or for office blocks. You need investors. Investors don't necessarily have to come from outside. Investors can be pension funds locally. There can be different businesses locally. It can even be circles. It can even be chamas. They can all become investors. So we are envisaging a project that will involve dividing Kibra into several different zones, and each one of those zones, maybe there'll be 5 acres or something, being given to different developers working with the Nubians. Then they will be able to invest, co-own those projects, just the same way you have in Dubai, for example. Nobody owns the land, but you come and build, and then you recoup your costs over maybe 20, 30, even up to 50 years. We are told by the investors they usually require 45 years. But the land remains for the Nubians, the property remains for the Nubians until the investors recover their cost. Meanwhile, the Nubians, who are the owners of the land, will be able to benefit from it because they'll be getting income from it, and they'll be having an asset base. So nobody is going to be thrown out. In fact, I'll give you a practical example. All the people who have vibandas and markets in Kibra, for example, you can actually put up a market, several markets in different strategic areas. They will be able to go in and have stalls in those markets. They will be able to get loans and service their loans from their sales, but the stalls and the market will belong to the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust. And after some period, after they have recovered their investment, then it reverts entirely to the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust to collect the rent, or they can come with any other arrangement after that, yes. Some people have asked, why is Imran Okoth still in the task force? Actually, the answer to that is that, first of all, Mhesh was never in the task force. Honorable Imran Okoth actually was never a part of the task force. When the task force was formed, and I remember clearly the background to it, that was in around October 2022. Around October 2022, I was approached by PS Hinga through the former PS of Lands, Dr. Nicholas Muraguri, and they were looking at why has Kibra not developed. The president wants to do development in the land in Soweto B, but they knew the 288 was under the Kibra Nubians. I referred them to the caucus. At that time, there was the caucus. The caucus had brought together all the different Nubian organized groups, as I call them, KLC, NRF, elders, and many others. So I referred them to the caucus, and the caucus engaged government, and ultimately they agreed to form a committee which eventually became the task force. At that time, Imran Okoth and Sheikh Ahmed Idris were part of the committee, but they stepped down because there was supposed to be a fixed number of people. And so from the word go, Mhesh Imran Okoth has never been a member of the task force. And even when we finished our term, he has never really been a member of the task force. Just like any other member of the community, him being a politician, we sought his views through public forums, but he has never been part of the task force. Now, the one thing I must make very clear, at this point in time, as we speak, there is nobody who is a member of the task force because the task force ceased to exist. Think about it like the example of Mhesh Imran Okoth. When his term ended, when the parliament term ended, and they were supposed to go to elections, he ceased being a member of parliament. He became a former member of parliament. And when there was a new elections, there was a new MP, Orero, he is now the new member of parliament. So when somebody's term is over, you are no longer in office. So for us, as a task force, our term ended on 5th of November. Alhamdulillah, we managed to finish everything we needed to do. Our report is complete. The preliminary report is with the ministry. It's just waiting for the ceremonial handover of the report to the government. And the government is actually waiting for the community, the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, to elect new trustees so that those trustees will be the one to engage government because the trustees act on behalf of the government. It's the same thing. The trustees, their term ended on 29th of November. So once their term ended on 29th of November, they are no longer in office. So right now, as we speak, there are no trustees in office who are active and official in office because their term ended until they are either re-elected or other people are elected. So the basic answer to your question is that Honorable Imran Okoth has never really been a member of the task force. I know he's been engaging the community of late about matters of elections for the trustees and others, but he's doing that on his behalf as a leader in the community, as a former MP, and also as the chair of the caucus. There's been a lot of disgruntlement and a lot of debate in the community that community members are saying they don't want affordable housing. They're saying that the task force, basically the task force that I was leading, is pushing for affordable housing, and they don't want affordable housing. People have a lot of bad memories about affordable housing projects elsewhere, which are very tiny houses and where people are not even able to afford, and they became basically what they said, they become tenants in their own land. But I want to dispel the rumors and the misconception. I want to clarify something. We as a task force, we were told we are a task force on the redevelopment and affordable housing project for Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust. The word affordable housing project was selected by government specifically because they are looking at making sure that whatever project is done, the housing must be affordable. But actually that term affordable housing is not an abusive term. I would say it is not a bad term. It is actually used in the constitution, the trust deed of the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust. Both the original trust deed of 2013 actually puts the objective of the trust, the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, is to deliver affordable housing to members. It is in black and white. And the 2022 restated and amended trust deed also says it clearly that the objective of the trust is to deliver affordable housing. So when you talk about affordable housing here, we are actually talking about something that has been explicitly mentioned in the trust deed. Now, we as a task force, our job was then to say, what are people saying about the affordable housing and what are our recommendations? Now, we did not at any given time have a brief to do anything that the government wants. And actually, if you look at our proposals, it is not in line with what the government is saying. Actually, for us, we are saying the Nubians want their houses to be built in a particular way. Now, we also say we want to build houses for tenants owned by the Nubians in a particular way. All those houses must be affordable. There is no tenant purchase scheme. There is no specification that the houses must be in a particular design or a particular model. Never. So, in reality, when we talk about the project that we envisage, the recommendations we have of the houses, it is based on the feedback from the community. It is based on very sound scientific and management principle, financial calculations, nothing, no template from the affordable housing project. But of course, on the other hand, we know that both the Kenya Kwanza government and the Azimio team, they all had affordable housing in their manifesto. In fact, Raila, His Excellency Right Honorable Raila, yesterday in a press statement I was watching on TV, said they had a blueprint for affordable housing, but the government, the Kenya Kwanza government, have their own way, which they are claiming is not working. They say they have a better way, but one thing we can be sure, everybody is talking about affordable housing. It is the worldwide trend. So when we talk about affordable housing, we talk about affordable housing in the context of Kibra, something that will be affordable to the Nubians to be able to own their houses, something that will be affordable for their tenants to afford so that they can actually make rental income. That is what we are talking about. So the task force has not come up with anything new. It has not come up with anything different. It is in line with what the Kenya Kwanza government and the opposition had in mind. It is in line with the feedback from the community, and will come up with a very, very nice proposal, even up to the cost. Of course, there's been a lot of this debate about how I think the Chinese, I think they're called Great Wall, they're building houses that are affordable, they're even cheaper than they're affordable for the government. There's been a lot of debate that the government project, the affordable housing for the government, is more expensive than even what is there in the market. What I can say for sure is that in our recommendations and in our report, we never said we'll go with Great Wall or we'll go with government. We have our own model based on what we picked from everybody. And from the model we have, the Nubians will be able to work with investors, joint ventures, what we call REITs from pension funds, because we met the investors, we even met all these pension funds groups, they're all very, very interested. The way it is done is that they come, they build the houses, then they rent them out, or if it's commercial, they rent or they do whatever project it is for commercial. They recover their costs, they share the revenue with the owners of the land, that's the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, and then whatever money once they have recovered their investment, whether it takes 20, 30, 40 years, because they usually look at a particular return. Actually, I was very surprised their return is not a lot. They actually look at only 8% return over a particular period. Once they recover their money, the house belongs to, goes back to the owner. Now, for the people who will be renting, they'll be paying the money to go back towards paying the project. But where does government come in? Government comes in because we need infrastructure. Infrastructure is the most expensive thing when it comes to housing. Roads are very expensive. Electricity is very expensive to set up. Sewage is very expensive. I mean, electricity, energy, whatever you want to call it. All these things are very expensive to set up. Green spaces are basically expensive because you have to, if you're going to do a master plan with a very nice, livable community, somebody has to pay for those. Now, typically those costs are factored into the cost of a project if you have a private development, which are most of the time small projects. This is one of the biggest projects you'll ever have anywhere. And in fact, we met the Tatu City chair, the founder and chair of Tatu City, and was saying, you guys, your master plan is excellent. We in Tatu City, that is them, took quite a long time to actually get the master plan right and start developing things. It cost them a lot. For us, the county government, which is in charge of housing in the county, has actually given us an offer. They are willing to source for the funds. We met Governor Sakaja himself. They are willing to source for funds through bilateral partners and donors and whoever they call, whatever they call them. And then they'll be able to build the road. They'll be able to put up energy, sewage, and the rest, water, all those things. And then what will happen is that the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust will then build the commercial and residential projects. So I asked the governor, but how will you guys make your money? He says, when they do that, they do it for decades, 50, 60 years. They're looking at 50, 60 years down the line to recover their money. They recover their money because people will have to pay taxes. People will have to pay for the water bills and the rest. Right now, the government earns literally nothing from Kibra because people are using pit latrines. People are using boreholes and water from Bowsers. But when you have a very nice development, the commercial people will be paying rates. They'll be paying certain things to government. The residential people will be paying. All these people will be paying.
So the question is, what criteria are important in selecting trustees?
So I've mentioned about trustees. Actually, trustees are extremely important when it comes to the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust and whatever redevelopment and housing project that will be done. Because the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, as the name suggests, is actually a trust formed for the Nubian community in Kibra. A trust is like a company or a SACCO, is a body corporate. So think about it, for example, the SACCOs. When you have SACCOs or a chama, people come together, they form a chama or they form a SACCO, they go register. So chama register with a different body, SACCOs register with a different body, companies register with companies registry. So a trust is actually formed under the Ministry of Lands. And it has members. And those members become the owner of everything that is there in the trust. In this case, it is the land. But then the members, unlike a company which has shareholders, then they elect directors and a chair. For a trust, the members elect trustees or they appoint trustees. Then those trustees hold the land and manage it on behalf of the trust, on behalf of the other members. So in this case, the management and the governance is actually governed by the trust deed. And one of the things that we picked from the community and from legal experts is that the 2013 trust deed had a lot of gaps. It was not very clear about the governance. It was supposed to be a transition period which was never really effected. Then a team came up through the Nubian caucus and they came up with a new trust deed in 2022. So when we came in as a task force, I mean, I was never involved in all those trust deeds before. When we came in as a task force, one of the first things we encountered is that people are grumbling, people are talking about the trust deed. We actually took it to legal experts, we took it to the Attorney General office, we took it to private lawyers and experts, and we indeed found there were some gaps in that trust deed. Most of it was okay, but for example, the trust deed talks about village bylaws because all decisions are supposed to be done at the village level. Not the trustees who make the decision, it's the village level. And the way the villages are supposed to operate, they're supposed to have a village committee or a village assembly, which then makes the decision. But the way they're supposed to operate is supposed to be through a village bylaw. Those village bylaws were never enacted. So one of the first things we did, we got legal experts, we talked to the community, and we came up with the draft village bylaws as proposals that we gave to the community, did legal clinics, and they even accepted it. Now those village bylaws have to now go to the trustees, and then the trustees then will get them ratified by the members so that they can come into effect. The other thing we didn't have at all, we did not have what we call registration and election bylaws. Because remember, you have to register members. We discovered that there was no official registry of members. It's like a company not having shareholders. It will not exist as a company. Or a SACCO not having SACCO members. It will not exist. So there were trustees who were interim or initial trustees, then the interim trustees who became initial trustees, but there are no members. We know that there were some efforts to register members, but even that, there was no proper criteria agreed upon. So one of the first things we recommended, we needed bylaws for registration and enumeration of beneficiaries and members, as well as election of trustees. So that one we also did. These two are very critical because they make the trust deed become into effect. It's like a constitution, and then you need to pass legislation and bylaws. Then finally, we also came up with proposals on the governance and the financial management of the trust. Because remember, any body corporate, you need to have a board of directors, in this case the trustees, you need to have management, and then you need to have the day-to-day running, and then of course the shareholders. So the trust is structured in such a way that it has several levels. We have the trustees who hold it in trust, we have the members who sit on top because they're the ultimate decision makers, but they do it at the villages level, 13 different villages, which must all agree, or at least 70% of them must agree before something is passed. Then you have management, which is are employees of the trust employed by the trustees. So all these structures were lacking. Actually, to be honest, is that the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust hardly existed because the trustees who are there did not have the resources. They did not have the finances. They did not have the means because there was no proper membership. There was no proper structures to manage it. So basically what we did is we came up with proposals based on the feedback we got from the community, a lot of engagement. We had more than 160 different meetings to just get views. And the proposals we came up with, we went to a legal clinic, we met the people, and ultimately it was agreed upon. We have given it to government through the AG's office to review it. We met political leaders, including the MPs, the senator, and so on, even the governor. All these things were put together through public participation, and those became our recommendations. Now, those recommendations can still be accepted or rejected, ultimately, based on how the government will engage. Because remember, the government got proposals from us. Now the government is supposed to sit down with the community. Our job is done. Now, here is where the trustees become very, very critical, because the trustees are the ones who engage the government, who will engage investors on behalf of what the members will say through their village assemblies. Unfortunately, when we came into office as a task force in February, we found out that there are no structures in place. The trustees had a lot of challenges, and we actually proposed and recommended that elections of trustees should be happen before our term is over, so that we can actually even hand over a report to the new trustees. But unfortunately, it never happened for many, many reasons. But a lot of the time, it was basically what I call frivolous reasons. People were just fighting. Some people went to court. But all of them recognize that we need new trustees. But nobody wants to take up the responsibility of ensuring that we have a political process of electing new trustees. So it is very, very important that new trustees be elected. As we speak, there are no trustees in office. Once you elect new trustees, those trustees take up the role as per the trust deed and the law of taking things forward. So it is very, very important to elect new trustees as soon as possible. Those trustees then will be able to take the process forward of making sure that there is a new trust deed that captures all the aspirations of the members. We have given our proposals as a task force of how those changes should be based on the feedback we have received from everybody else. Those people can make sure that the trustees will make sure that everything is done legally so that there is no challenge, everything is properly done. They'll make sure that the register of members is watertight, because you need to actually have a register of members based on criteria and so on and so forth. And then they will go ahead now and engage government and investors to say, how will they redevelop this land? I believe that the elections is coming up on February 18th. I saw some communication which was from the chairman, the outgoing chairman of the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, Mzee Suleiman Aganas, who has actually communicated, and I think there is a meeting of the for pre-nomination meeting on 7th, which I think is this Friday. Then there will be a meeting for nominees on over the weekend, where anybody who wants to be a trustee can go and collect nomination papers and submit their names that they want to be a trustee. Then let the democratic process take place. I think they are going through IEBC at the Kibra constituency to actually conduct the elections. If it is properly done, I think it will be very good, because it will be open, transparent. Anybody can become a trustee as long as you fit the criteria in that you are a descendant of the original Kibra Nubian land soldiers, and that you beat all the criteria of Chapter 6 and you are above 18. And I believe that the elections will be held based on whoever is nominated. There will be a process of now probably vetting them, and thereafter then there will be ballot. And the one who wins then become the trustee. But remember, there will be also other positions to be contested later, particularly the village committees. The village committees, we need elections so that we have a village chair, secretary, assistant chair, assistant secretary, and treasurer. Those people will be very, very key. In fact, I usually say that the most important and powerful offices are not the trustees, because the trustees just hold in trust and they follow the instructions of the members. It is actually the village committee, the village assembly leadership. Those will be the most important and the most powerful people as per the trust deed. Whether you look at the 2013 trust deed, 2022 trust deed, or even the revised trust deed that we are recommending. Because the village leadership will be the one who will be coordinating with their villages to make decisions, to make recommendations, and to give instructions to the trustees and the management. So if you ask me today, if for those people who want power, you know, people will always be there who want power, they want politics, people who are interested in influencing things, you are more likely to have an impact, better impact as a village assembly leader than as a trustee. So there have been concerns about, first of all, historically, if you look back, when the initial trustees were appointed or nominated then as interim trustees for a transition period, that a point reached that there was no accountability amongst the trustees to the members, that there was no cohesion among the trustees. They were pulling in different directions. So out of 13 trustees, some were doing things this way, other people are said to be heavy-handed. There was an issue about the management of the trust. And actually for a long time, things were quiet up to, I think, around 2018, 2019. And even when the trustees became active, there have been accusations that they are doing things unilaterally. We know for sure, it's in the public domain, that there have been a lot of debate and accusations against the trustees who started actually in 2013, 2014, that they went quiet, they were doing things on their own, they were incognito, they were not answerable, they were not accountable to people, they were doing things unilaterally, which, as I said, I attributed to challenges of resources. But nonetheless, the key thing here is that all these accusations point to lack of what we call standard operating procedure, accountability, and it's because there are no bylaws. It is because the trust deed was not very clear. It was actually silent on how some of these things are supposed to be done. So after meeting community members, after collecting views, even going to experts, some of those experts were actually appointed even by the same people who have been fighting the trustees. The experts themselves and our experts in the task force came up with recommendations which we have put in the revised trust deed that is supposed to go into effect once the members approve it, whereby we are saying that you must have level of governance and accountability. Just like in Kenya, you have the government, you have the executive, you have the legislature, you have the judiciary. Each one, their power is very, very clear. How are they supposed to interact with each other? Checks and balances. Those are the things that are supposed to be there. So the way to avoid conflict and the way to forestall conflict and the way to deal with conflict is to make sure things are very, very clear. And our proposals in terms of the bylaws, our proposal in terms of some of the minor revisions in the trust deed address that, in that it says what are the powers of the trustees, what are the powers of the village assembly leaders, what are the powers of the beneficiaries and members, and then there are additional checks and balances. For example, there is the nominations committee or the Majlis Shura. The Majlis Shura is also supposed to act as a mediation committee, so that whenever there is maybe a conflict between villages or between village and trustees, they come in as mediators, and there are principles of how they'll do that. There is supposed to be a registration and elections commission, because you cannot be trustees who also conduct your own elections and conduct elections for others. So that's supposed to be an independent body. There's supposed to be what we call a dispute redress mechanism, which addresses, or grievance redress mechanism, so that whenever people are aggrieved, they have a place to go to. All these are well-established governance structures in other organizations which we have emulated and adopted. We met with the village members at the village levels. It was endorsed, and now it's just basically a matter of passing those bylaws and adopting them, yes. And if we get them adopted, then we'll have very smooth governance. How can Nubian Youth Council be active in the matter of Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust? I think the Nubian Youth Council has a very integral role to play. In fact, during the elections, after the elections of the Nubian Youth Council, when Hussein Mahmoud Macho was elected, I spoke openly, and I'll repeat it again, and I said, the Nubian youth are the most important stakeholders in the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust. Why do I say that? I say that because the youth, according to the census, those who are under 40 years of age are more than 80% of the population. So if they're more than 80% of the population, it means they basically control and own the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust. So it is up to the youth to take an interest in what is going on with the matters of the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust, matters of the governance, matters of the elections of trustees, because if they don't and things don't happen, nothing is moving, they'll have nobody else to blame but themselves. But more importantly is that if you look at historically, across the ages, the youth have always been the ones who move mountains in any community, in any civilization, in any society. Look at something like Alexander, the so-called Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great from Macedonia in Greece. He became the biggest ruler of the time, and he died at 33 years. So he actually conquered the world when he was in his prime of his youth. Look at Obama. Obama became president. Before he became president, he moved a lot of things when he was in his youth. So the youth have the mental capacity, the vigor, the energy, the drive, the desire, and they have the capacity and the capability to make changes. Unfortunately, in Kibra, I'm not a youth anymore. I'm almost getting to 50 years. But unfortunately, in Kibra, most of the time, the youth are wasted. You find people who are less than 40 years old, they're not given the opportunity. And a lot of the time, those are the professionals. Those are the people who are in their prime. They're not given the opportunity. And then we blame ourselves. We blame others when we should be blaming ourselves, because as youth, you have not seized the mantle. You have not taken the opportunity to get involved. You have the civic duty to participate in civic matters of your community and the country as a whole. So I really want to urge youth, all the youth, the young people from high school age to 40 years, extend that to even people who are in their middle ages up to 50 years before retirement, 60 years. They must take the initiative and get involved. It is their civic duty. I will actually even urge that the youth, particularly those who are in their prime, 30 years to 40 years, guys who are professionals, get involved. We have a lot of lawyers, we have architects, we have engineers from the Nubian community. but they are so afraid of getting involved. Why? Because they get afraid of getting getting involved in the mud or stuck in the mud. I will not have been involved as a chairman, other than the fact that I was on sabbatical, I had all the time, but I can tell you it's not very easy. I know, for example, somebody like Advocate Rama, somebody like Advocate Rama Koma, I mean, Ramadan Koma, he got disenfranchised because he tried to do a lot of things. He did a lot of good things when it came to the trust deed, but he was being rubbished. A lot of people are doing that. As a community, it is high time that we started respecting professionals. We give the youth the opportunity to lead, and we give them the space. So for the Nubian Youth Council, I think you guys are in a pivotal point where, because of where you are, and because you guys have legitimacy, having conducted elections and being the majority in the community, you have a very big say. So I will urge the Nubian Youth Council, number one, to actually get involved strongly in these elections that is going on for the trustees. Some of them should even vie to be village leaders. Even some of them should vie to become trustees. Why not? Number two, they should make sure they choose the right people. People who they know have integrity, have capacity. We don't want invalid, incapacitated people as trustees. People who cannot even get out of bed because they are unwell. People who cannot even come for meetings. People who cannot even communicate using information technology. We need people who have the capacity. We have been told that in Islam, choose leaders who have the physique, the physical health, and the mental capacity. People who have the wherewithal, who can actually be able. That is the criteria of a leader. So choose leaders wisely. I have no preferred candidate. I don't even know who the candidates are. I don't know who the nominees are. But the youth must take interest in their villages to make sure they choose the right people. Number two, the youth must influence who gets involved. If you know somebody is not the right person, then there is a political democratic process of making sure that that person does not see the light of day, that their nomination does not see the light of day, that they get excluded. You have the power. You are the majority. You are the biggest voters. There is no reason why you should not be able to do that. Number three is that I want to urge the Nubian Youth Council, the youth through the Nubian Youth Council, they must engage. Because as soon as new trustees have been elected, the next process is to elect the village assembly leaders and then elect the people in the different structures of the trust, and even recruitment of the management committee. The management executive committee, when it's being recruited, the youth must get involved. They must have a say in it because they are stakeholders. They must get involved to make sure that the revised trust deed that meets the aspiration gets registered. They must get involved to make sure that the register of members gets registered. All these things need effort. In fact, I usually say it's actually more about the effort than money. Sometimes we think we need money, but actually it's the effort. But the youth are also big voters. They are influential. They can go and knock on government doors. I saw the other day, Nubian Youth Council, the new council, and their board went and met some of the government officials. They should do that more often. They should engage more often because the government listens to voters, and the youth are the biggest voters. They should get more involved to go and talk to people who are not understanding what's going on, people who are just there, mongi gala tutu, they're just mongi ning ning, mongi mongonus to kalamato instead of taking action. And I'm not shy to say, there are a lot of organizations in Kibra that are not giving solutions. They're just bringing problems. The youth should call them out and go and talk to them and say, hey, KLC, NRF, Kenya Nubian Council of Elders, all these people, Bawaki, let them come on the table and say, these are the solutions they have. The youth must engage them, and then they must pass that to the trustees and pass that to the community because the youth have the reach. So the youth, for me, are the most important people in this process. And if they do it right, we can go to the next level. Finally, whatever that the task force did in terms of our report, we have full transparency, we have records and an audit trail of how we came up with our recommendations. Those recommendations are going to go to government. When it gets to government, government will decide. But because government was also represented in the task force, we assume that most of those recommendations will be accepted by government. When those recommendations get accepted by government, then those recommendations will have to go to the community. The youth must get involved to make sure that those things are done in a way that will be of maximum benefit and protect the interests of the community. Because remember, for us, we're coming up with proposals and recommendations which are broad and cross-cutting. Ultimately, the youth must interrogate those and then make sure that they hold government, the trustees, and investors accountable to ensure that their interests as the youth, the interests of the community are met, the principles are met. Everything is very, very clear. Through those details, they can actually end up making sure things are done properly. But on the other hand, if they just sit back, they'll have nobody else to blame later if people end up hijacking the process and doing things in a way that will be detrimental or counter to what was the aspiration of the community based on the views that we collected and our report. So I will conclude by really urging the youth to tell them that this redevelopment project that the task force was appointed to collect views and come up with proposals, our recommendations, and all the things that the government and the trustees through the Kibra Nubian Community Land Trust will implement is of their direct interest and their direct benefits. In fact, I usually say that a lot of the things that will come out of this, in terms of the fruits of this, will not be seen by people like me, definitely not by people who are older than me, because some of these things, they take years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. A lot of the people who are for or against some of these things might even not be there by that time, but the youth will be there, inshallah, and it is they who will benefit. Jobs, wealth creation, owning businesses, being professionals involved in all this conveyance and designs and everything. It is the youth who will be involved. So it is of their direct interest. It will create for them jobs. It will create for them wealth. It will give them a better future. So it is up to the youth to demand and ensure they get a seat on the table, both in terms of elections of trustees, in terms of engagement between trustees and government, and engagement between trustees and interrogation of what the task force came up with. Shukran.